The Yonko are some of the strongest pirates in the world, besides this one. And the main question that everyone has is how they rank. That's what we're here for today, but disclaimer, this is my interpretation of this list. Some of you may have different interpretations, so at least be constructive in the comments. However, at the same time, I'm like the best One Piece power scaler, and my opinion is basically fact. So if you could subscribe to that fact, that would be greatly appreciated. Now pretty quick, let me lay down some rules. I will be using Whitebeard before the war, the current versions of Shanks, Luffy, Blackbeard, and Buggy, and these two before they were defeated. So I don't want to hear, well, Primebeard would just solo, because that outcome is very boring. Second of all, some characters on this list are very vague and very close, as in I can't even decide who would win. So when I talk about 2 or 3 characters right beside each other, just know that they can be placed in whatever order. Now let's start off with who I think is the weakest. It's Buggy. Duh, nigga, like what did you think? Now, I would go over Buggy's actual scaling. Yes, there is actual scaling to him. Let's just say that he might be able to beat Chapter 1 Luffy. But I already did that in my Warlords video, so go check that out if you really care that much. Number 6. Big Mom. Obviously, the gap between Buggy and Big Mom is like the Earth to the Sun, but even so, Big Mom is easily the weakest out of the non-cap emperors. I legitimately don't understand the argument of Big Mom over Kaido because it makes absolutely no sense. She quite literally tells Luffy, if you can't beat me, then what makes you think you can even touch him? I honestly think people just have PTSD from Whole Cake Island or something, but moving past Whole Cake into Wano, we have number 5, Kaido. I already know what y'all are finna say. Kaido is the strongest creature. No, he is not.
Connection terminated.
Kaido attained this title after Whitebeard died, and even then, it's just a rumor. There's no evidence to back it up, and nobody who says this is an actual credible source. Same thing goes for, if it's a 1v1, always bet on Kaido. Like, yes, he's only lost 7 times, but that don't mean it can't happen again. I want you to imagine this for a second. If you were an average Joe in the One Piece world, and the strongest man just died, who would you think is stronger? The old Marine who is clearly past his prime, the 2 dudes who only use swords for some reason, or the 25-foot straight muscle monster who has had 40 attempted executions, but all of them failed? No shit. People are going to assume that Kaido is the strongest. However, as outside viewers of these events, we know that being physically great isn't the only thing that matters in One Piece. Lastly, some people may bring up the random SBS where Oda said Kaido is the strongest, but not only are most SBS answers jokes, but this statement is very loose to begin with. Number 4, 3, and 2, oh my god, Luffy, Blackbeard, and Shanks. Now these 3 are extremely close, but I'll tell you why Luffy versus Kaido isn't. So the simple fact is, Luffy in Gear 5 was on his deathbed. When he awakened, there was no implication of his health going back to maximum or going up at all. In fact, Luffy states that he is still dying, which is almost what happens mid-fight, but Gear 5 is so broken that he just gets back up anyways. So this near-death Luffy outlasts Kaido, who hasn't even been knocked out yet. This basically proves that if awakened Luffy and Kaido were to battle again in a straight 1v1, Luffy would win due to sheer endurance. And it's like, I know YouTubers always have the title of blank versus Blake isn't even close, but most of the time, the outcome is by a thin margin. Obviously, there are some counter arguments to this. Everyone likes to bring up the amount of opponents Kaido fought, but they don't pay attention to the quality of those opponents. Sure, he fought the Scabbards, then Worst Gen, which is like 14 people, but Luffy says himself that all the damage they did was basically ineffective. It wasn't until people started pulling out ACOG that any effective damage was done. But even then, Zoro can't even knock Kaido over, Luffy awakens Crude Conquerors just for Kaido to start eating those bitches, Yamato fights him in a losing battle, and then Luffy comes back, goes through all of his gears just for Himothy to laugh at him in Gear 4th. By the time Gear 5 comes out, Kaido is at like 50 HP. We also know that he is nowhere near his limit because Yamato states that if Kaido runs out of strength, then Onigashima will fall. That's also a thing that people say in Kaido's favor. He was holding up a city the whole time. However, we really don't know if this is an active or passive ability, and even if it was active, Momo could do the same thing. Lastly, Yes, Gear 5 is pretty limited, but Luffy probably ain't gonna use it instantly. In an actual serious fight, Luffy is not just finna jump to Gear 5 immediately. In summary, it all goes back to what I was saying earlier. Gear 5 Luffy, who needs a Chug Jug, outlasts Kaido, who was hit for 50, but he can still solo the whole squad. So Blackbeard and Shanks are extremely weird. Neither of them have shown their true power, and they can scale in a few different places. To keep it short, Blackbeard, for real, should be below Big Mom. But if you think he's a future Luffy opponent, then I guess he's this high. There's pretty much no in-between, and you can stretch this to say that he's stronger than Shanks, but I like Shanks better, so he wins. The red-haired rat has two different interpretations for his power, and it all goes back to chapter 1. So Luffy is now an emperor, a great pirate on the level of Shanks. However, does this mean that he is marginally weaker than Shanks? Are they equals, or has Luffy surpassed Shanks? Whichever way you look at it, their reunion would make sense. A scenario where Luffy is weaker than Shanks is realistic. An outcome where Shanks admits Luffy is stronger and laughs it off is possible too. Any interpretation is valid, but I personally think that Shanks is the second strongest character alive. Sorry, Garp. There is a line of scaling where you could say, Kid gets one shot by Shanks, but Big Mom's named attacks can't put him down. You can include Law in this statement to make Kaido weaker than Shanks as well. However, we know that these are not the most powerful versions of the duo. Overall though, I think most can agree that Shanks has better narrative portrayal than most other characters. I'm also just biased. Number 1. Hospital Beard. This choice is very simple. The fact is that Whitebeard, while on his meds, is still the strongest man in the world. His feats, or should I say L's at Marineford, barely count because he was sick as fuck. Marco says this, Oda reinforces it, and his observation hockey feats add to this as well. When White was on his meds, he was easily able to sense Ace attempting to assassinate him while in his sleep, but during the war, Squad was able to get the jump on him. If I were to rank Whitebeard during the war, he would be below Big Mom. That's honestly how much weaker he got. And then Primebeard would still be on top, however that's not to say that he didn't decline with age. Also, Primebeard solos Roger, so even if we were to put him on this list, he would lose. Stay mad.
I'd rather put my trust in July. 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 I'd rather